I would like to share with the world why it is that I have no doubt that I'm communicating with the real Jesus Christ through Brent Spiner. I used to believe, like John MacArthur teaches, that the apostolic signs had ended. But as a result of my experiences with Brent and Jesus, and because the Antichrist, who is Zach Knight, has already arrived, I believe that some of the apostolic signs are returning as the church age transitions over to the tribulation. And anybody who reads the book of Revelation can tell that the apostolic signs will return during the tribulation. Let's get this here. John MacArthur is a cessationist. He calls modern visions, revelations, voices from heaven, messages from the spirit world, dreams, speaking in tongues, trips to heaven, anointings, miracles, all lies, all false, all deception. He believes that the apostolic gifts ended at the end of the apostolic age, which was around 100 AD. Other than this, I think John MacArthur is a very good, sound Bible teacher, and I would heartily recommend that people that want to learn the Bible should listen to him. I asked Jesus once, which Christian denomination is closest to you? And Jesus said, Christians have more in common than they have differences. So I don't think Jesus wants us focused on our differences as much as he wants us focused on what we have in common. The problem is when you try to win a lost world to Christ, if Christians are arguing with each other all the time, that's a real turnoff, and that's not going to win people to Jesus. And Jesus' main concern right now is that more people will come into his kingdom. And when us Christians are arguing with each other over theological differences that really don't amount to a hill of beans in the eternal scheme of things, then Jesus is not happy about that. Okay? The best thing we can do to make Jesus happy, I believe, is to have love and forgiveness in our hearts and to be the shining example of the Christian life to the world. That people look at us and they can see that we are different, that we have the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, those things. So that's what Jesus wants. And I kind of don't even like talking about the miracles that Jesus has done, because then everybody gets all hung up on the miracles and they don't get focused on the person of Christ and how we should be like him, which is where the emphasis should be. But I'm going to do this because Satan's followers have got a pretty successful defamation campaign against me to get me labeled as mentally ill so that I lose some people for Jesus. So how do I know that I am dealing with the real Jesus? First of all, if you listen to my last video where I talked about how Brent Spiner became my soulmate, I'm convinced that I'm dealing with the real Brent Spiner. And Brent Spiner would not lie to me about something this important. And if he says that Jesus has met with him, then I believe him. But let me just tell you how I know, just from my dealings with Jesus through Brent, that I'm dealing with the real Jesus. I've read the Bible through hundreds of times. And so I would say I know the Bible very well, much more than the average person out there. And I have hit Jesus with some pretty tough questions. He comes up with a brilliant answer to everything that he wants to answer. Some stuff like I ask Jesus, can you tell me when the rapture is going to come? And Jesus says, Gail, I don't rapture and tell, which sounds like Jesus. So far, nothing that he said to me in our conversations with him violates the character of God as I know him through the Bible studies that I've had, or nothing that he said contradicts the Bible. I've hit him with questions like, I've asked him about the tribulation. I said, Lord, is the plan of salvation in the millennium the Sermon on the Mount? And he said, no, Gail. And that's what I'd learned from Dr. Peter Ruckman, who I used to follow. Jesus got me out of that. So he said, no, He said, that isn't correct. And he didn't really tell me I said, well, can you tell me where in the Bible you can explain to me what the millennial saints will have for their plan of salvation? He says, well, it's probably somewhere in the book of Revelation, Gail. He doesn't really like to go into the future because he wants us to be concerned with living for him in the here and now. He says, Gail, and he got really upset with me when I was working on my book because I was going way into the distant past, talking about how it just going way, way back, like why God created Satan and all this. He says, Gail, I don't even want you to go there. He said, tell the story about you and your men, okay? Keep it there. He says, when you start going into the distant past and you start speculating about who I am, how Satan came into being, why I created Satan, all this sort of stuff, you start getting a little inaccurate and you're going to lose. I think he's worried about me losing credibility, and he wants to have as many people in his kingdom as possible. So he said, Gail, don't go back there. He said, I don't want you to go to the future either. He said, just the here and now, tell the story about your men. No distant past, no far future. So he was very upset about that. So, well, let me just tell you some examples. You know, down here I have a crown. And every now and then, the gum tissue around that crown gets swollen. And it's caused by the systemic yeast infection that I got from the Jesuits, the yeast bacterium. And sometimes the yeast will just kind of like pile up in that one section and the gum tissue will swell up. Well, Jesus told me about a year ago, he says, Gail, you don't need to go to the dentist. Okay, he says, just keep your teeth clean and you'll be fine. That's what he told me. But you're used to thinking that. I don't know if this is true for everyone else, but he said, for you, Gail, he said, just keep your teeth clean, you'll be fine. But I had a hard time believing that because every time I go to the dentist, they say, oh, you've got horrible recession. You need to come in for cleanings 3 times a year. So I went to the dentist. He didn't really push it on me. And when I went to the dentist, they cleaned my teeth. And I noticed there was a strange atmosphere in the office. They seemed overly concerned about my teeth. I mean, my teeth weren't really bothering me except for that one swollen area by that crown. And I figured that was the yeast. Anyways, the dentist came in looking real serious, like they took x-rays. And he showed me on this x-ray this big black hole in the root area of this tooth. And the dentist says, oh, Gail, he says, you've got a huge cavity in that root. And he says, we are going to need to take your tooth out and put an implant in there. And he said, it's going to cost like $2,000 or $3,000. I'm thinking, I can't afford this. My dental insurance won't cover it. My dental insurance is about to expire. And I got all freaked out about it, you know. And I started calling all these dental insurance companies, trying to figure out. And I figured, I guess that's why that gum tissue is all swollen, you know. Well, about a week later, Jesus showed up. I was talking to Brent, and Jesus showed. He doesn't appear to me. He appears to Brent. And I said, Jesus. I said, what's going on? I said, you know, I got a flat tire on that day that I wanted to go to the dentist in October. I said, why did Zach Knight do that? And Jesus said, no, Gail, I did that. He said, because I didn't want you to go to the dentist because I knew that the Jesuits would kill your dentist and replace him with his clone. And he said, Gail, you do not have a cavity in that root of your tooth. That dentist is lying to you. He says, those x-rays were fake. He said, the Jesuits did that. I said, when did they kill my dentist? He said, it was about an hour before the clone dentist showed up in your office and told you the lie that you had a big cavity in your root. So I said, so I guess you want me to cancel all my dental appointments for the implants? He said, yes, Gail. He said, you don't need to see him. So I did that, and I believed Jesus, even though at the time I still was, getting some of those symptoms. Well, what happened was I keep taking my Seroquel for which is I take it for the yeast. What Jesus said, he created Seroquel just for me. Now, he knew I would get labeled with a mental illness label, so he created he's so clever. he created a medication which is designed for mental illness and made it so that it would work on my yeast infection. So this way I can get, the government to pay for my Medicaid. Anyways, it's just, Jesus is so smart. So what's really funny is, guess what? Okay, that was November when the dentist told me I had a big gaping hole in that tooth. I've canceled all my appointments with that dentist. I believe Jesus. I think that is a clone now, that they killed my real dentist, who was a good man. Jesus said he saw him in heaven. He said hi to him. And it's been 6 months. If I really had that horrible cavity in there, I think this whole side of my mouth would be all swollen, and I would probably be in horrible pain. You know what? I have no symptoms there right now. Every now and then it'll swell up because of the yeast. I know what some people are going to say. Oh, you probably have a slow-moving cavity, or they're going to come up with something. No, I don't have a cavity in that root. Jesus was right. That dentist lied to me. That's why I believe I'm dealing with the real Jesus. Because if that wasn't Jesus and he gave me bad advice about my tooth, and if my dentist told me the truth about my tooth, I probably would be all swollen on this side. And I probably would have just said, hey, that's a fake Jesus. I'm not listening to him anymore. And I'm going to keep going to that dentist, and I'm going to get the implant that he recommended. He said an implant was the only answer. If I had listened to that dentist, I would probably be about $3,000 in debt right now for a procedure I didn't need, and which the Jesuits probably would have used to try to sabotage my health. So Jesus said this to me. He said, Gail, do you remember back in 2000 when you prayed to me and I told you you didn't have breast cancer and you didn't need to go to those doctors to get the biopsies done, and you went anyway? I said, yes, because Brent and my family was worried about me and they wanted to make sure I didn't have breast cancer, and the doctors recommended I go. So he said, well, you remember what happened because you didn't listen to me in prayer and I told you you didn't need to get those biopsies done? I said, oh yeah, let me tell you what happened. One of those biopsies, they went into my breast. And I don't know what the Jesuits did to me, but I think they contaminated something I ate or drank beforehand. And the biopsy, I lost so much blood from the biopsy. I was so anemic, I felt like I was going to throw up. When you get severe anemia, you feel that way. I had this horrible migraine headache. All I could do after the biopsy was over, and they found out I didn't have cancer from the biopsy, by the way, I laid in bed and I just groaned, and the headache was horrible. And Jesus told me in prayer that I didn't have breast cancer. He said, Gail, if you write for me, I'll take the breast cancer away. You say, oh, so now you're telling all women not to get biopsies. No, I'm not telling you that because you're different than me. But Jesus did speak to me personally in prayer. It wasn't a voice. It was just a still small voice when I was reading my Bible. And he told me you didn't need those biopsies. And I just didn't have the faith to believe in it at that time. I wanted to play it safe. So I ended up getting 2 biopsies done. They both came out negative for cancer. But Jesus had told me all along you didn't need to go. And I ended up suffering terribly as a result of one of those biopsies. Like I said, I lost so much blood from it. I almost fainted. It's a miracle I made it home after the operation. I drove myself home. So I'm just saying that. Another thing, one time I was typing with Jesus and Brent, and the keyboard froze. He says, Gail, I told you to stop typing. I want you to listen to me now. I said, why can't I type? Why aren't my letters going through? He said, I'm doing that, Gail. He said, you can choose to listen to me or you can choose not to listen to me. You may say, oh, he sounds like he's so mean. Oh, actually, he's really cool. Jesus is really cool. Most of the time, he's real positive and he's saying he's proud of me. In fact, the last I heard from Jesus, after he corrected me about my writing, saying, don't go into the future, don't go in the past. He said, just, stick to the here and now. And you know what? I decided to listen to him. And I said, thank you that you care about my writing. And he cried because I listened to him. He says, your writings are just so brilliant. I'm so proud of you, Gail. So I have the real Jesus. I know it.